All right, welcome back, AP Euro students, to another lecture. This time we're going to be looking into the ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, which we associate with socialism and or communism. And so we have another ism to add to nationalism, liberalism, conservatism. And this ism is going to, I think, truly revolutionize the world, though not in the 19th century as much as the 20th century, when we see the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution destroy the Tsarist regime and create a new type of political organization that we'll see with the Soviet Union. So I think this movement that Marx and Engels began is going to be rather important, and I'll talk in a bit about how it's different from the utopian socialists of the last lecture. So in this lecture we're going to take a look at Hegelian philosophy, and moreover we're going to be really kind of looking at a technique developed by Hegel. Then we'll look at Karl Marx, and I should have put Marx and Engels. Everybody seems to forget about Engels, and some background and context. We'll look at the development of historical materialism, or scientific materialism as some like to call it. And then we'll take a look at the implications of Marx for Western society, which I just kind of mentioned and hinted at. So I'm going to break this lecture up into two so that it doesn't get to be too long. So here goes. We're going to look briefly at Hegel. We've talked about Hegel, and the method that I mentioned just a moment ago is the dialectic method. So Hegel was a German philosopher, an idealist, who believed that intelligence, culture, and the mind develop over time, and that this is what leads to this idea of historical idealism. Hegel and his thoughts are rather abstract and somewhat difficult to understand, and Hegel himself referred to the idea of the totality of his works. That is, you have to read all of Hegel to before you can really understand Hegel. We're not going to read any Hegel, and I'm going to try to synthesize very briefly for you the technique known as the dialectic, which I think you have encountered before, hopefully. So, the dialectic is a process, according to Hegel, by which the spirit comes to know itself and realize its idea. So the idea is that there's a world spirit that is at work in history, and through the use of dialectic, one can begin to understand this idea of the world spirit that's at work in history. And so let's just look at the dialectic process, and I think that an example will help to help us understand what that is. So the idea is there's a thesis. So you begin with an idea. And the thesis in this example is the family. And Hegel refers to the family, that is the nuclear family, mom, dad, kids, as undifferentiated unity. That is, the family operates and acts and behaves as a unit. They're undifferentiated, that is. And there's also unity, so we, at least we assume, right? A good family is a unified family. Doesn't always work out that way today, but the idea that Hegel had was families were undifferentiated in unity. So we're gonna smash that thesis, the starting idea, with this idea of civil society, the antithesis then, and that is differentiated disunity. So just the opposite of the thesis, the family. What does he mean by that? So civil society is a collection of individuals who are different one from the other. That is the idea of differentiation. And they, being different individuals, they are also not unified, as we saw in the family. So we have differentiated disunity. That's the opposite or the antithesis of the thesis. We smash these two together in Hegel's dialectical process, and we get the synthesis. That is, the result of the collision of two ideas is a new idea. And for Hegel, really the end of history, that is the end of these dynamic ideas that interact and conflict with one another, is the state. And the state is characterized by differentiated unity. So we still have individuals who are different one from the other. However, in the state, these different individuals work together towards a common purpose. And I think we can see here the idea of nationalism. So you might have Germans working together in a state which, of course, didn't exist, but that was the idea. If there had been a German state, these individuals could work together for a common purpose. So we're going to see that Hegel's ideas are going to come back when we think about national unity movements in Italy and Germany. But this is the idea of the dialectical method. And the idea of the state was that this would lead to an improvement of human life and human society. So the state is this idea. It's abstract, and it's going to allow differentiated unity. That is, it's going to allow for an improvement in human life and human society. So that's that idea, and we're going to apply that idea when we look at Marx and Engels. So we're going to get right down to Marx and Engels. Here we are at about 5.5 minutes. So I'm just going to sort of recapture and reiterate Hegel, and then we'll build from there, build off of that. So Hegel argued for an idealist idea of history, the world spirit, and that is a history that would lead to the emergence of the state as the unifier of distinct individuals, and this unified state would lead to progress and improvement of the human condition. Now that ought to sound and remind one of Enlightenment ideas and ideals and thinkers. That is, how do you make create a happier and better society? And for Hegel, it's going to be the state. And Hegel then was a philosopher of ideas, not overtly concerned with material things. And this is really where Marx and Engels are going to come in, and they're going to take Hegel's idea, or at least his method of the dialectic, but they're going to apply that to material things. And so what Marx and Engels are going to do is see history as, again, a clash of ideas that drives history forward, but Marx and Engels are going to abandon the lofty and abstract world ideas, the world of ideas that is the world spirit, and look at material objects and things. So that's the idea. And what Marx is going to do is he's going to turn Hegel upside down, a concept we've seen before. And really what Marx is going to say is they're not ideas that are abstract that are going to clash, but Marx and Engels offer the idea that all history is a history of class struggle, that it's really these classes that are going to conflict with one another that move history forward towards its natural conclusion, which is not going to be the state as it was for Hegel. It's going to be the absence of the state. So Marx and Engels are going to do something radically different in terms of how to improve society and human life. We're going to get rid of the state. We're going to overturn the state and live in a world without states and without classes, by the way. So that's the big idea that we see. If there are any questions about that, let me know. Hopefully it's somewhat familiar to you. All right, we're going to look at a little bit of context and background. And as we do that, we're going to start with this quote from Marx himself. And that quote is this, you see it up on the screen: "Communism is the solution to the problems of history." Now, before we go on, we really then need to look at, well, what is the problem of history? I think communism is going to be the end, but what's the problem of history? And to do that, Marx and Engels come up with 3 issues or themes that interact in a dynamic way that help us define and or understand the problem of history. And the first one is this philosophical anthropology. What the heck is that? It's simply this. It's simply the idea that man is different from animals in that man is able to reshape his environment based on his needs. And Marx argues that man is a homo faber, that is, man is a maker, a doer, who can adapt his natural environment to his needs through the productive idea of work. You see that idea of work in progress, a guy holding a shovel. Man can adapt to the changing needs, to changes in nature and society in order to survive and to prosper. That's the first thing. So we have man as homo faber, and we're going to look at the idea of labor later when we think about Marx's and Engels' ideas. There's also another natural historical fact, and that is all societies in history have a division of labor for the production of goods necessary for survival. So, for example, in prehistoric times, men hunt, women gather. And we can see this division of labor clearly through the 18th century Enlightenment, where Rousseau is going to divide men and women into 2 spheres. The Industrial Revolution, though offered some opportunity and hope for women, it is really going to, we're going to see in the 19th century, divide women again into those ideas of distinct and separate spheres, especially middle-class women. And then the last, and probably the most important, is this idea of scarcity and poverty. Marx observed, and Engels observed as well, human societies can never produce enough goods to satisfy all of its members. And this is a big problem. And given the shortage of goods that exists, this leads one class of society to emerge as the ruling class. And that ruling class will then try to monopolize the scarce goods in order to enjoy a better and more satisfying life, while others then are left behind. Others are left in misery. Others are left in a state of poverty. And Marx and Engels really conclude that this is inevitable. Given scarcity, there will be competition for scarce resources and goods. One class will win. The other class will then again be left behind, living in a state of misery and poverty. So that's probably, of the three, the biggest problem that Marx and Engels begin to look at. And I'll just say by way, Marx was a student at the University of Berlin. Because of some radical writings, he was kicked out of the university. He went to France. He met and read the utopian socialists and became familiar with their ideas and their works, which were rather lofty, romantic, detached from reality ideas. Then he meets Marx. He eventually is kicked out of Paris for, again, radical and subversive writings against the Bourbon regime before it fell in 1830. And then he's going to meet Marx. Or rather, we meet Engels in England, and Engels is the son of wealthy middle-class Germans who actually own textile factories in England. So Marx and Engels are going to meet. They're going to share ideas and experiences about what they've observed, and what they observed was the lives of workers in factories and factory towns was in fact quite miserable, wretched, and poor. And so that's the starting point then for when we think about Marx and Engels, and communism is the solution to the problem of history. So whereas the utopian socialists came up with their own solutions, whether they be the phalanges of Charles Fourier or the model industrial communities and towns of Robert Owen, the utopians were rather not practical, rather impractical. Marx and Engels are going to come up with and develop a very practical approach to solving the problem based in this idea of scientific materialism. So they're going to study the material, the economic foundations of society materialistically, and then develop their ideas. So with that, I'll stop at about 12.5 minutes. If you have any questions, please let me know and jot them down, and then we'll get into lecture 2 the next time. Thanks.